We've talked on the YouTube channel about Star Wars Squadrons, this upcoming, Star Wars flight simulated game, guys, which I'm really intrigued by, even though I'm terrible at flight simulated games. This is the first one that I'm really kind of interested in a major way, simply because it's Star Wars, guys. And with that, it comes out later this year. October 2nd, 2020 is the current release date. But what I wanted to go ahead and do, guys, in this segment of the show is talk about the top 5 things that we want in Star Wars Squadrons. When I say we, guys, I'm going to be giving you guys mainly my thoughts and opinions here. Some of you may agree, some of you may disagree. Let me know in the comment section down below what the 5 things you want in Star Wars Squadrons. So let's get right into it, guys. Coming in at number 1 for me, guys, is from a campaign perspective, which Star Wars Squadrons is being presented as a, as a single player experience or a campaign experience as well as a multiplayer experience. And so for me, when we talk about the campaign side of things, I want the campaign to be in the sky as well as on the ground. So what I'm getting at here is, sure, most of the game is primarily going to mostly be you behind the cockpit, and doing the story from that perspective. But I also would like to see it kind of mixed up a little bit, where maybe it's 80%, maybe even 90% in the air, but like 10 or 20% on the ground, where you're able to kind of really interact with other characters. You're able to kind of start really diving into this story in a major way, really understanding the characters and where their, character arcs are, and the new characters that are going to come into the fray here. I think that's all really important with Star Wars Squadrons continuing to build the legacy and lore of Star Wars as a whole in video game format. Coming in at number 2 for me, guys, I think it's going to be, I think it's important that when we look at all the different types of ships that you see in Star Wars, there seems to be so many different, Star Wars, ships and such that you could possibly, helm in this game potentially. Now, we've only had a few that seem that you're going to be able to play with or kind of fly around in, from so far. But what I would love to see is that there's a number of different ships that you're able to helm, a number of different, TIE fighters and different, just ships in general that you're able to helm and customize and such, which we'll get to here in a sec. But just being able to fly a number of different types of, of fighter ships and such, I think it would be really cool to be able to, the more variety, the more different types of styles each of these ships is going to bring you. And so I think that's going to be really important as well moving into this game. Coming into number 3 for me, guys, I think it's going to be important to introduce, some new characters, which I alluded to earlier, but introducing us to new characters within the Star Wars story and canon of Star Wars, but really introducing us new characters. I think it's really important, guys, like, seeing some existing characters so it feels like Star Wars is awesome, but also having those new characters is awesome. Like, I'll give you an example, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, some of the characters within that game throughout the course of the story, you really start to appreciate some of these characters, and most of them are new characters that you've never heard of before, like in some of the other previous games or in the movies even. And so that's what I'm getting at here, is having new characters. Having existing characters is fine, but having new characters that you get to learn about, it just helps build upon, like I said, the legacy and the lore of Star Wars as a whole. Coming in at number 4, guys, I think, moving over to the multiplayer side of things, I want to see there be air combat as well as ground combat in the multiplayer. Now, whether or not they decide to have it all done in the sky, which is what it seems like it's most likely going to be because it's a flight simulated game, what I think would be cool is having multiple different modes. This is another thing, guys, kind of like the ships. It sounds like there's not a lot of different ships to helm. It sounds like there's not a lot of multiplayer modes to play. So what I'm getting at is I hope that over time, even if it's not directly at launch, they add some new modes as well as new ships you're able to use. So what I'm getting at is this. From a multiplayer perspective, I would love to be able to play play modes that you're able to do things just in the sky, but then also being able to play on the ground as well. Or they incorporate half of the fight is done in the sky, half of it's done on the ground, and how that transitions would just be really interesting to say the least. Being able to play, from a multiplayer perspective of, run and gun almost, like, as well as in the sky. I think having a balance between the two of them, or, primarily more heavily into the flight simulated style, But what I'm getting at is having variety here is going to bring more and more people into this game, in my personal opinion. People who are into the shooter games, people who are into flight simulated games. I think if you're able to cater to a number of different, groups out there and communities, it would be really smart. And that leads me to number 5, which is just more multiplayer game modes. As I kind of alluded to, having just a number of other game modes outside of what they're kind of stating right now. Now, the full game isn't even, out yet, guys. It comes out in October. So we got our first glimpse, of course, really at, our major glimpse at EA Play. And what I'm getting at here is that being able to kind of traverse the world, play your style, whether that's from a, being able to run and gun almost like in, Star Wars Battlefront, or if you're able to, fly around in the sky, having those as options would be absolutely awesome in this. It also is kind of a two-part where I really want to see the customization in a major way. They've already stated that the customization is going to be apparent in, the cockpit, having different things and different items in there. But I hope that on the outside, you're able to have a lot of different earnable items, earnable skins on your characters, on your on weapons, on the ships and such, and then different titles and as well as emblems in the in-game lobbies that you can see other people have earned and such, as well as ranks, so that you can try and kind of have more earnable things that people want to earn within the game based on the time that they're putting into the game. That just shows and that brings people back to the game over and over again to try to earn those earnable items. So earnable items over that of payable items in the form of microtransactions. So that's what I'm getting at here, guys, is I just think it's important that there's a number of different ways you can connect with a game like Star Wars Squadrons, because it's kind of the first of its kind within Star Wars, so to speak, especially coming out on this generation hardware, but even moving into the next generation hardware as far as consoles and things of that nature. There's a real special opportunity here, I believe, for EA as well as Motive Studios to do something really special here. I just hope they don't, mess it up where it's too many microtransactions or everything's behind a paywall, or, we already know all the disasters that happened within, of course, Star Wars Battlefront 2. So I'm just hoping, guys, that with some of these ways they can make it, we can play the game how we want and have those, for those who are experts at flight simulated games, they are able to just jump into the fight, have that skill-based matchmaking for them. And the same thing for people who aren't very experienced with it or who aren't very good at flight simulated games like myself, where it's catered to us as well, where we're able to jump into the fight and our skill-based matchmaking, having that where we're playing against other people who are of similar skill to us, would be really awesome as well. But with that, guys, those are the 5 things that I want to see and want to have in Star Wars Squadrons. Let me know what you guys want to see. And for more Star Wars Squadrons content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.